A common thematic question that plagues the main characters in Jujutsu Kaisen is the concept of a sorcerer. What is one supposed to do as a sorcerer? Are they heroes that stand for protecting the weak, or are they at the end of the day simply people who must be selfish and prideful in order to survive in this cruel world? One character who struggles with this balance more than anyone is none other than our protagonist, Yuji Itadori. One of Yuji's primary struggles throughout the series thus far is one of heroism versus shamanism. What is the line that he straddles? Is he himself a good person even though throughout his time as a sorcerer he's had to make sacrifices on his moral compass? Well, within the realm of this video, I'll be discussing, even with all of Yuji's desire to save others, is Yuji Itadori a hero? What is heroism? The concept of heroism in and of itself is a very, very tricky idea. The ideal version of a hero may vary from person to person, and because of this very definition of heroism, this makes it very hard to pinpoint a middle ground that most can agree on. Some perceive heroes as strong people who save others. Some say if you fight villains, you are a hero by default. And there are an infinite amount of ways that a hero can be defined by each person's own upbringing and moral compass. My personal definition of a hero, and one that I'll be operating under during this discussion, is this. A hero is a person who is truly and wholeheartedly altruistic in their actions. In order to be an altruistic person, one must selflessly give without goal of return or reward for the sake of improving one's personal well-being and lessen others' suffering. Simply put, altruism is the pinnacle of being selfless and giving to others. Applying this to Yuji Itadori results in a seemingly simple conclusion. But before this conclusion is drawn, let's peer back at Yuji's initial motivations that kick-started this journey into the sorcerer-filled world. In Chapter 1 of the series, Yuji's grandfather gives him the core of his initial ideology moving forward. Because Yuji is strong, his grandfather encourages him to help people. He wants better for his grandson than to be dying with only one person by his side. And as such, helping people is a surefire way to make sure that he never dies in this fashion. Yuji takes this and runs with it, which leads him to consuming Sukuna's finger and becoming the vessel of the King of Curses himself. Now, just based off of this, you may be led to believe that Yuji is a very clearly and distinctly heroic figure. However, just like most well-written characters, there is a bit more nuance to him as a human being than what we see initially. After meeting Principal Yaga, Yuji's ideals are tested strongly for the very first time. As one of his puppets is wailing on Yuji, Yaga interrogates him, asking him exactly why he has decided to become a sorcerer in the first place. As Yuji continues to push the burden of his possible death onto his grandfather, who was the inspiration for everything up to this point, we see that Yaga is pressing him, pushing him, and making sure that Yuji has to acknowledge his ideology. And after Yaga makes Yuji realize that he has to take it on and take responsibility for his own actions from this point forward, we get a bit of introspection into what makes Yuji tick.
それは俺にしかできないんだって。ああ、今スクナのせいで人が死んでるかもなってへこんで、俺には関係ねえ。そんなのごめんだね。自分が死ぬ時のことはわからんけど、生き様で後悔はしたくない。
Now, this specific scene, this excerpt makes us realize a few things about Yuji. One, Yuji's heroic actions are not completely selfless in nature. While he did consume Sukuna's finger without hesitation in order to save Megumi, when talking to Yaga, it becomes clear that by saving people with his strength, he derives a sense of purpose and enjoyment. If you remember correctly previously, I defined altruism as saving others and being selfless without goal of return or reward. Keep that in the back of your mind, as this will be prevalent throughout the entirety of this video. In any case, if he were to ignore his talents and simply live his life as he would have before meeting Megumi, knowing that he could save people, this would haunt Yuji and ruin his ability to fulfill his supposed purpose. I think that what we see in Yuji here is not a sense of true altruism or heroism like you'd expect from a Superman or even Deku, but more of a savior complex, or more appropriate to the context of this video, a hero complex, if you will. A hero complex, for all those who don't know, is essentially a condition in which someone feels that they need to save everyone and be the stereotypical hero in any dangerous situation. I think what Yuji naively believed this early in the series is that his own strength and power is great enough to be the hero that he envisions within his mind. However, as the audience and Yuji soon come to realize, he is not able to shoulder these burdens alone at his current physical and mental state. And he is certainly not strong enough or truthful enough with himself to keep up with this very ideological viewpoint. In episode 4 of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara go on their first mission as a unit. By all imagination of both the characters and us, the viewers, this was not meant to completely destroy our main characters in the way that it did. Within the span of just a few minutes of the mission starting, Nobara is taken away by a random curse. Megumi is forced to run away in order to save himself and Nobara, and Yuji's hand is taken clean off, as well as him being mentally broken down. Now, the reason for Yuji's complete and total breakdown is rather simple. Yuji had an ideal mental picture of what it took to be a Jujutsu sorcerer, and he also had a mental image of just how strong he truly was. Both of these images, both of these preconceived notions were dead wrong. He drastically underrated the strain and stress of being a Jujutsu sorcerer, both physically and mentally, and he also drastically overrated his mental fortitude and the power behind his fists. This is why, as he's attempting to hold off the special grade finger bearer's attack, he asked the question, was I really this weak? This question is the internal realization that Yuji has, where he comes to terms with, at this point, he is a complete failure. The facade of his strength was completely broken, and so was his body, which forced him to give up his body to Sukuna and inadvertently cause his own temporary death. This is the first of many failures that Yuji experiences as his time as a sorcerer. By the hands of Mahito, he loses Junpei and actually loses a piece of his own ideology when he is forced to kill a person due to Mahito for the first time. And while there are several other failures that apply to himself, I think what is really important for answering the question of this video is finding the response to the many failures that he experienced. There is a very particular scene in Jujutsu Kaisen that no matter how many times I watch it, no matter how many times I read it, I still get chills because of how amazingly this portrays Yuji's struggle as a character and as someone who once perceived himself as a hero. In episode 12, during his first confrontation with Mahito, Junpei is killed before his very eyes. And as he desperately pleads and begs Sukuna for help, basically desiring to give up everything that he can in order to save him, Sukuna simply refuses. This refusal is a shock to Yuji's system, as Junpei, the kid who he grew to care about and wanted to save, dies, not even completely human anymore, in his arms, asking Yuji why this had to happen to him. To make matters worse, Sukuna and Mahito see the anguish on Yuji's face and the tragedy of the situation and laugh at Yuji. Both Mahito and Sukuna shriek with the cruel joy as Yuji stands there, stunned and breaking. And it is here where Yuji is reminded of the cruelty of the world that he lives in. And he seemingly remembers that these things, these creatures, are not human. They are curses. And as a sorcerer, they are his mortal enemy. And this leads to one of my favorite lines, not only in Jujutsu Kaisen, but honestly in anime and manga as a whole. And in order for you to get to the full effect, instead of quoting it myself, I'll simply play the clip.
今まで俺の口から出た言葉は全て嘘だったんじゃないかと思えるくらい腹の底から出た本音ぶっ殺してやる。
This entire interaction is really amazing and spectacularly well done. But there's a specific line that I'd like to hone in on that I just played. The next words that spilled from my lips came from so deep within me that it made everything else I've ever said feel like a lie. I will kill you. This line not only displays the entirety of Yuji's emotional turmoil and rage, but it also has a much deeper meaning to it. This line foreshadows Yuji's development over 100 chapters later in the Shibuya incident arc. What Yuji is saying here is that the meaning behind these words hold much more truth and weight to them than anything else he's ever said. Any altruism, any heroism, any airs of goodness or morality that Yuji has or thinks that he has are contradicted by the pure and utter desire to murder Mahito that consumed his entire being in this instance. His true purpose, his true calling was subconsciously realized here. Kill curses, destroy them, exorcise them. That is what Mahito truly makes him understand, albeit this is something Yuji doesn't take to heart until the latest part of the Shibuya incident arc, which I'll be talking about moving forward. Keep in mind that from this point on, I will be diving into Jujutsu Kaisen manga spoilers. So if you want to hear my verdict on the topic without spoilers in a very spoiler neutral area, skip to this timestamp where I will be past talking about the manga. But in any case, it's time to discuss the finality of Yuji's arc up to this point in the series. In the Shibuya incident arc, Yuji's misconceptions on who he is or what his purpose is within the current structure of the Jujutsu Kaisen world are snuffed out completely. There are two core instances in which Yuji not only physically, but ideologically changes quite a bit. The first major change in Yuji's mindset stems from his fight with Choso. This is a very poetic kind of development for Yuji because we know that Choso is Yuji's older brother now, so for him to play such a major part in Yuji's development as a character is very interesting. In any case, it is during this fight when Yuji comes to terms with two very different yet equally scary topics. The first one is that Yuji is okay with death. Whereas before, when faced with death from the Finger Bearer curse, Yuji was completely terrified of it and desperately pleaded for the ability to continue living. Now, after all of the struggle, all of the failure, and all the turmoil that he had gone through in between these two instances, this has helped Yuji grow and develop as a person. Now, when faced with an attack that pierces his liver, which in his mind could possibly lead to death, Yuji is perfectly fine with death as a concept because he's started to grasp his role in all of this. The concept of his role blends very nicely with the acceptance that he does not have to be the one who survives Shibuya and saves Gojo. This is the time he is able to break away from his hero complex, from the savior complex, from the idea that he has to be the one to save everyone, understanding that his purpose in every mission might not be so grand and important, and realizing that sometimes it's okay to handle a seemingly small task if it helps his allies move closer towards their goal of saving Gojo. Now, while this is a very impressive development for Yuji, it really comes to its climax in chapter 132 after Yuji and Todo defeat Mahito's true form, and it is in this chapter Yuji makes an extremely interesting and iconic statement. I am you. I wanted to reject you, convince myself that you were wrong, but that doesn't matter now. I'm gonna kill you. Even if you come back as another curse, I'm gonna kill you. Change your name, change your form, I'll kill you again. I don't need to find meaning or reason. Maybe 100 years after my death, my actions will become apparent. In the grand scheme of things, I'm probably nothing more than a cog, but I'll keep killing curses for as long as I can. That is my role in all of this. This monologue is perfect. The tone, the coldness in Yuji's words, the fear in Mahito's eyes, and the development that this forces Yuji to take is simply spectacular. The impact of this statement for Yuji's character is almost immeasurable. The fact that in these 2 pages of monologue, Yuji comes to terms with the fact that in comparison to the scope of the world that he inhabits, he is not that special, tied in with the fact that in order to fulfill his job, he genuinely does not require a purpose or reason in his actions, all completely wrapped up in the fact that he's becoming less and less human, less and less heroic in every word that he speeds towards Mahito, is the culmination of all that development, the pain, the suffering, the understanding, and finally the acceptance of what it means to be a sorcerer. So, to answer the initial question that started this video in its entirety, is Yuji Itadori a hero? No. Yuji, as we know now, is not a hero by any stretch of the imagination. It's arguable that even in the beginning of the series, before he was tainted with the pain and sorrow of being Sukuna's vessel, he wasn't even a hero. Just like every other character, curse, sorcerer, or otherwise, Yuji Itadori is no more of a hero than anyone else. He is simply a person put in strenuous circumstances that has come to understand just how insignificant and unimportant they really are. If anything, Yuji Itadori is a sorcerer. The question of heroics and morality in Jujutsu Kaisen has to be one of the most interesting and beautifully illustrated things about the series. Specifically with Yuji, I think that Gege Akutami has done an absolutely outstanding job in portraying the slow descent into almost this nihilistic and fatalistic view for Yuji, who was once a very bright and idealistic person and character. I hope that within the realm of this video, I was able to portray even a shred of the depth and quality that this arc for Yuji has to offer, and if I was able to in your eyes and in your interpretation, I'm truly content in the fact that I succeeded. If you guys did end up enjoying this video and want to see more deep dive Jujutsu Kaisen analysis of the plethora of amazing characters within the series, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on more videos like this. This was honestly one of my favorite scripts to put together and videos to make, so if you guys did enjoy, links to similar analysis videos will be in the description below, and the cards for you guys to enjoy at your own leisure. In any case, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, this is Broken Ronin, signing off.